the sweet Sunday visits. The aroma of cinnamon and warm butter always announced Grandma Rose's Sunday presence long before her familiar, gentle knock. Today, however, Lily and Tom were already at her door, practically vibrating with anticipation. Rose smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she pulled them into her cozy kitchen. The counter was dusted with flour, and a tray of golden brown cookies, still warm from the oven, cooled on a wire rack, their sugary scent a sweet invitation. Grandma Rose. Tom, a whirlwind of boundless energy, launched himself at her, a hug that nearly bowled her over. He was a boy built of questions and restless curiosity, his mind always searching for the next adventure. Lily, ever the more thoughtful of the two, offered a gentler embrace, her fingers tracing the intricate pattern on Rose's apron. "They smell wonderful, Grandma." Lily possessed a quiet sensitivity, a tendency to observe rather than immediately act, a trait Rose recognized in herself. "Fresh out of the oven, my dears," Rose said, her voice a comforting murmur. She offered each child a cookie, still slightly soft in the middle. Tom devoured his in 3 enthusiastic bites, crumbs scattering like confetti. Lily, in contrast, took small, deliberate nibbles, savoring each mouthful. "Are we going to read stories today, Grandma?" Tom asked, his mouth full, already eyeing the worn copies of fairy tales stacked by the armchair. "Of course, and then we'll check on the strawberries in the garden," Rose promised, a playful glint in her eyes. "They're getting very plump." The afternoon unfolded in a familiar, cherished rhythm. Rose settled into her armchair, Lily curling up beside her, Tom sprawled on the rug, his chin propped on his hands. Rose's voice, a steady, melodic cadence, filled the room as she recounted tales of brave knights and cunning foxes, her words painting vivid pictures in their young minds. Tom occasionally interrupted with a fervent "why?" or "what happened next?" his eagerness infectious. Lily, however, listened with an almost solemn intensity, sometimes reaching out to touch Rose's hand, a silent gesture of connection. Later, in the sun-drenched garden, Tom raced ahead, eager to inspect the ripening berries. Lily moved more slowly, her gaze sweeping over the vibrant blooms, a small smile playing on her lips. Rose watched them, a warmth spreading through her chest. These Sundays were sanctuaries, moments untainted by the subtle shifts she sometimes sensed, the fleeting hesitations that occasionally clouded Lily's usually open face, or the way Tom sometimes paused, as if recalling an unspoken instruction, before embracing her. She dismissed these brief shadows as mere imaginings, the natural ebb and flow of a child's developing mind. "Look, Grandma. This one's huge." Tom's shout broke her reverie, and she joined him, marveling at a particularly large strawberry. He carefully plucked it, presenting it to her like a precious gem. "A magnificent find, Tom," she praised, her heart swelling with affection. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the children's departure always felt too soon. Lily hugged her tightly, a lingering embrace that held a quiet depth. Tom, after a final, boisterous hug, ran to the waiting car, already recounting the day's adventures. Rose stood on her porch, waving until the car disappeared from view. The house felt suddenly quiet, but the lingering scent of cookies and the echo of their laughter filled the space, a testament to the love that anchored their Sunday visits. She knew these moments were precious, vital threads weaving the fabric of their family. And she would hold them close, protecting them fiercely, come what may. Whispers in the air. The scent of baking cookies, usually a comforting embrace, now felt different. It was on a Tuesday, while Grandma Rose was kneading dough in the sun-drenched kitchen, her movements slow and practiced, that Sarah began. Lily and Tom, perched on stools, watched their grandmother's flour-dusted hands. "You know," Sarah murmured, her voice a soft, almost conspiratorial whisper, as she leaned closer to the children, "Grandma Rose is very unique. Not everyone understands her ways." She paused, a slight sigh escaping her lips. "She's from a different time, you see. Things were stricter then." She has her own ideas about how things should be. Lily, usually quick to chatter, blinked. She glanced at Grandma Rose, whose back was turned, humming a tuneless melody. Tom, ever curious, piped up, "Different how, Mama?" Sarah offered a gentle, almost sad smile. "Well, darling, she can be a little overwhelming. She means well, of course, but sometimes her affections are a bit much. And she worries, bless her heart, about everything. It's just her way. We just have to be mindful, okay? We don't want to upset her or make her feel like we're ignoring her, but we also need our own space, don't we?" Her gaze flickered between them, a silent plea for understanding. Later that afternoon, when Grandma Rose emerged from the kitchen, her apron still on, her face flushed from the oven's heat, she extended her arms, ready for their usual boisterous embrace. "My little sweets. Come give Grandma a squeeze." Lily, who normally launched herself into her grandmother's arms, took a step back. Her eyes, usually bright with unreserved affection, now held a flicker of uncertainty. Tom, always a whirlwind of energy, hesitated too. His usual headlong rush faltered, replaced by a tentative shuffle. They exchanged a quick glance, then offered small, almost stiff hugs, their arms barely encircling her waist. The usual robust squeeze was absent, replaced by a fleeting touch. A cold prickle, sharp and unexpected, pierced Grandma Rose's heart. She felt the subtle distance, the unspoken reservation in their movements. It was a shift so minor, yet so profound, like a barely perceptible tremor beneath solid ground. Their eyes, once so guileless and open, seemed to hold a new, guarded quality. She smiled, though the warmth didn't quite reach her eyes. "There we go, my little loves," she said, her voice betraying none of the sudden ache within her. She released them, her hands lingering for a moment longer than usual, seeking the familiar warmth that now felt just out of reach. Later, while helping Lily with her homework, Sarah subtly reinforced the narrative. "Remember, sweetie, Grandma Rose loves you, but sometimes her love can feel a bit heavy, can't it? It's okay to need a little room to breathe." Lily nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in thought. The seeds of doubt, carefully planted, were beginning to take root, twisting the children's pure, uncomplicated affection into something tangled and uncertain. Grandma Rose, meanwhile, observed the slight, almost imperceptible changes in their behavior, a quiet sadness blooming in her chest. She saw the new hesitation, the fleeting uncertainty, and a quiet alarm began to sound deep within her. Unkind stories. The scent of baking bread, usually a comforting embrace, now felt like a fragile veil. Grandma Rose, kneading dough with practiced ease, noticed the shift first in the children's eyes. Lily, perched on a stool, meticulously arranging sprinkles on a cookie, no longer hummed. Tom, usually a whirlwind of questions and sticky fingers, sat quietly by the window, tracing patterns on the condensation. Their visits, once filled with boisterous laughter and eager tales of their week, had become muted. Sarah, leaning against the kitchen doorway with a practiced air of casual observation, sipped her tea. Her voice, usually a melodic lilt, took on a conspiratorial whisper when she spoke to the children. "Remember that pretty red car, Lily? The one Grandma Rose said was too loud for her house, so she kept it? She just wanted it for herself, didn't she?" Lily's brow furrowed, her small hand pausing over a blue sprinkle. Grandma Rose had admired the car, yes, but had never even touched it, let alone kept it. The toy was still at their home. Later, as Tom recounted a scuffle with a classmate, Sarah interjected, "Oh, like when Grandma Rose accidentally spilled juice on your drawing, Tom? She probably thought it was too messy." "She doesn't like messy things, does she?" Tom's lower lip trembled. He remembered the juice spill, but it had been him, not Grandma Rose, who'd knocked the glass. His grandmother had patiently helped him clean it up, comforting him about the ruined picture. Now, a seed of doubt was planted, watered by his mother's calm, insistent tone. The stories grew bolder, more insidious. The antique doll Grandma Rose had shown Lily, a family heirloom, became the doll Grandma Rose hid because she didn't want you to play with it. She only likes grown-up toys. The intricate wooden puzzle Tom had admired transformed into the puzzle Grandma Rose took apart and put away because she thought you were too silly to solve it. Each fabrication, delivered with a sympathetic sigh or a knowing glance, chipped away at the children's trust, replacing innocent memories with distorted narratives. Lily's once bright, unburdened smiles during their visits shrank, becoming tentative, almost apologetic. She'd glance at her grandmother, then at her mother, a silent question in her wide eyes that Grandma Rose couldn't decipher. Tom, less subtle, would occasionally glare at a specific object in the house, a small frown marring his face, as if seeing an accusation in an ordinary teacup or a cushion. He'd hug Grandma Rose less tightly, his small arms stiff rather than embracing. Grandma Rose felt it like a dull ache in her chest, a persistent throb that deepened with each strained silence, each hesitant glance. Her heart, once so full of unadulterated joy in their presence, now felt heavy, burdened by an unnamed sorrow. She saw the children's vibrant spirits dimming, their spontaneous affection replaced by a cautious reserve. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that something was deeply, terribly wrong. The unkind stories, invisible threads of deceit, were weaving a tangled web around her grandchildren, and she had no idea how to untangle it. She just knew she had to try. A secret notebook. The silence of the house pressed in on Grandma Rose, a heavy blanket woven from unspoken words and averted gazes. The afternoon sun, usually a comforting presence, now cast long, accusatory shadows across the polished floorboards. Just an hour ago, the living room had been filled with the children's hushed voices, their movements stiff and reluctant. Leo had barely met her eyes when she'd offered him a freshly baked cookie, a treat he usually devoured with gusto. Maya had politely declined a story, retreating to her room with an air of practiced distance. And little Chloe, her bright, innocent smile now dimmed, had clung to Sarah's hand, peeking at Rose as if she were a stranger. Rose sat in her favorite armchair, the worn velvet a familiar comfort against her back. A sigh escaped her, tasting of sorrow and bewilderment. This chilling indifference wasn't sudden, it had been a slow, insidious creep, a gradual erosion of the warmth that once defined their bond. Each visit, each phone call, chipped away a little more, leaving behind a hollow ache where joy used to reside. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that Sarah was behind it. The subtle hints, the loaded questions from the children, the way Sarah's eyes would glitter with a triumphant glint when the children dismissed Rose, it all painted a clear, disturbing picture. Her mind, usually a placid lake, churned with a new resolve. She couldn't let this continue, couldn't stand by as her grandchildren were poisoned against her. The truth, however painful, had to be preserved. Not just for her own sake, but for theirs. One day, they would need to understand. Rose rose, her joints protesting softly, and made her way to the small, mahogany writing desk in the corner. She opened the top drawer, rummaging past old letters and dried lavender. Her fingers brushed against a slim, leather-bound notebook, its pages still crisp and unblemished. It was a gift from her late husband, a blank canvas meant for dreams and reflections, never quite filled. Until now. She found a pen, its ink flowing smoothly, and opened the notebook to the first page. Her handwriting, usually flowing and elegant, was a little shaky as she wrote the date, October 14th. Below it, she began to transcribe the afternoon's events, careful to include every detail: Leo's averted gaze, Maya's refusal of a story, Chloe's sudden shyness. She noted the precise words Sarah had used earlier when she'd subtly implied Rose was feeling a little under the weather and might need her rest when the children had asked to play a game. Rose wrote with a focused intensity, translating the swirling emotions in her heart into clear, undeniable facts. The act of writing brought a strange sense of calm, a feeling of taking control in a situation that had felt utterly helpless. This wasn't just a diary, It was an archive, a testament. Each entry would be a brick in a wall of truth, built against the tide of Sarah's falsehoods. She would document every cold shoulder, every dismissive tone, every subtle manipulation. Dates, times, exact words, nothing would be left to memory's fickle hand. When the page was full, her hand ached, but her spirit felt lighter. She closed the notebook, its leather cover cool beneath her fingertips. Now, to hide it. She considered several spots, beneath the mattress, inside a book, in a locked chest. But Sarah was cunning, observant. Finally, her gaze fell upon an old hatbox in the back of her wardrobe, filled with sentimental trinkets and faded photographs. She lifted a delicate lace handkerchief, placed the notebook beneath it, and then carefully rearranged the other items on top. It looked undisturbed, a forgotten corner of her past. No one, especially not Sarah, would ever think to look there. The secret notebook was safe, a quiet sentinel guarding the truth. Years apart. The scent of Grandma Rose's baking, once a powerful magnet, now only vaguely registered for Lily and Tom. They were older now, a quiet young woman on the cusp of adulthood and a lanky, restless teenager. Their Sunday visits, once a cherished ritual filled with laughter and stories, had dwindled to sporadic, strained affairs. Lily would trace the patterns on the worn floral upholstery, her gaze fixed anywhere but on her grandmother's kind, searching eyes. Tom, perpetually fidgeting, would find endless fascination in the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams, his shoulders hunched as if bearing an invisible weight. Rose observed them with a quiet ache in her chest. The bright spark that once animated their faces when she recounted tales of her own childhood, or when she taught them to knead dough, had been replaced by a veiled distance. Their responses were clipped, polite, but devoid of genuine warmth. "How was school, Lily?" she'd ask, her voice gentle. "Fine, Grandma," Lily would reply, a whisper barely audible, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her cardigan. Tom, when pressed, would grunt a noncommittal answer, already halfway out the door, eager to escape the stifling politeness. The quiet in the house, once a peaceful hum, now felt like a chasm. Rose longed to reach across it, to pull them close, to ask what truly troubled them. But she knew the answer, or at least, a part of it. The subtle shifts in their language, the way they'd sometimes parrot phrases she knew weren't their own, the way their mother would conveniently call just as they were settling in, pulling them away with urgent, vague excuses, it all painted a clear picture. The fabric of their family, once so vibrant and strong, was being systematically unraveled, thread by painful thread. After they left, the silence in the house was profound, broken only by the ticking of the antique grandfather clock. Rose would sit by the window, watching their mother's car pull away, feeling a familiar hollowness settle in her stomach. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years, she would go to her hidden box. The folder, now thicker, held more entries, more dates, more precise quotes, documenting the subtle jabs, the veiled accusations, the carefully constructed narratives that had slowly, insidiously, poisoned her grandchildren's minds. She wrote about Lily's averted gaze, the way her hand flinched slightly when Rose tried to offer a comforting pat. She chronicled Tom's increasing irritability, his quick temper, a stark contrast to the boisterous, open child he once was. Each entry was a painful reminder of what was being stolen from them all. It wasn't just her relationship with her grandchildren that was fracturing, it was their understanding of truth, their ability to discern genuine affection from manipulative tactics. A deep longing throbbed within her. A longing for the days when Lily would nestle into her side, a book open between them, and Tom would burst through the door, eager to share his latest adventure. She yearned to dispel the shadows that clouded their innocent eyes, to expose the intricate web of deceit woven around them. But she knew the time wasn't right. Not yet. She had to be patient, to continue her quiet vigil, knowing that one day, the truth, like a persistent seed, would eventually break through the hardened ground. Until then, her documentation was her solace, her proof, her silent promise to them all. The invitation. The scent of old paper and lavender filled Grandma Rose's study as she meticulously arranged her notes. Sunlight, filtered through the lace curtains, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air, a silent testament to the passage of time. Years of observations, scribbled thoughts, and carefully time-stamped recordings lay before her, a mosaic of subtle betrayals and calculated manipulations. Each entry was a small prick to her heart, but each also represented a step closer to the truth. She ran a gnarled finger over a photograph of Lily and Tom from years ago, their smiles bright and unguarded, before the shadows began to creep in. She closed her eyes, replaying snippets of conversations in her mind. Tom, barely 10, asking why Mommy said Grandma always tried to hurt people. Lily, a year older, withdrawing into herself after a visit, her usual effervescence dulled. Rose had watched, listened, and documented, a silent sentinel gathering evidence not for vengeance, but for understanding and, ultimately, for healing. The weight of her secret knowledge was a heavy cloak, but the time for wearing it in solitude was drawing to a close. A deep, calming breath filled her lungs. The decision, long contemplated and agonizing, was finally made. It was time. Time to lay bare the intricate web of deceit spun around her grandchildren. It wouldn't be easy. Lily, sensitive and averse to conflict, would likely retreat. Tom, with his passionate nature, might react with anger. But the truth, however painful, was a foundation upon which genuine relationships could be rebuilt. She believed in their innate goodness, their capacity to discern right from wrong, given the full picture. Rose picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over Lily's contact. Her heart hammered a gentle rhythm against her ribs. This call marked the end of one era and the uncertain beginning of another. She pressed the button. "Hello, Grandma?" Lily's voice, a little hesitant, floated through the receiver. "Lilybug, it's Grandma Rose," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "How are you, dear?" They chatted about Lily's studies, her new art project, the usual pleasantries that now felt like a fragile veneer over deeper currents. Then Rose steered the conversation. "Lily, I have something very important I need to discuss with you and Tom. Something that needs to be said in person. Would you both be free to come over this Saturday? For lunch, perhaps? I'll make your favorite stew." A pause stretched, thick with unspoken questions. "Oh. Yes, Grandma, I think so. I'll check with Tom. Is everything all right?" Lily's tone was laced with cautious concern. "Everything will be, my dear. It's just a conversation we've put off for too long. A very special talk, just us three. It's about our family, and about truth." Rose chose her words carefully, hoping to convey the gravity without causing undue alarm. Lily promised to confirm after speaking with Tom. Next, Rose dialed Tom's number. He answered with his characteristic boisterous energy. The invitation was extended again, met with less hesitation but a distinct thread of curiosity. Rose knew their mother had instilled a sense of wariness toward her, but she also knew the deep love they once shared hadn't completely vanished. This Saturday, that love would be put to the test and hopefully emerge stronger. The truth revealed. The familiar scent of Grandma Rose's lavender and lemon cleaner usually brought a wave of comfort, but today it hung heavy in the air, tinged with an unfamiliar tension. Lily fidgeted with the strap of her bag, her eyes darting from the floral patterns on the wallpaper to Tom's equally uneasy face. He stood by the antique grandfather clock, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, a picture of restless uncertainty. They'd answered Grandma Rose's urgent call, a call unlike any they'd received before, and now they waited in the quiet living room, each breath feeling too loud. Grandma Rose entered, not with her usual bustling energy, but with a deliberate, almost solemn grace. She carried a worn leather-bound notebook and a small, older model voice recorder, placing them gently on the polished coffee table. Her gaze, usually sparkling with warmth, held a deep, unwavering resolve. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady, though a faint tremor touched the last word. "There's something I need to show you both, something I've kept hidden for a long time." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced at Tom, whose brow was furrowed in confusion. He'd always been the more outwardly expressive of the two. "Grandma, is everything all right?" he finally managed, his voice a little rough. Grandma Rose offered a small, sad smile. "It will be, eventually. But first, you need to understand." She opened the notebook, its pages filled with neat, looping script. Alongside the writing were dates, times, and brief, coded notes. "For years," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "your mother, Sarah, has told you things about me. About my supposed toxicity, my manipulative nature, my inability to be a good influence." Lily flinched, remembering the countless hushed conversations, the warnings, the subtle shifts in her mother's demeanor whenever Grandma Rose was mentioned. Tom's eyes widened, a flicker of anger replacing his confusion. "I heard it," Grandma Rose stated, her voice devoid of accusation, simply stating a fact. "Not directly, not always. But I observed. I documented. And sometimes I recorded." She pushed the voice recorder forward. "I wanted to understand why my grandchildren were being turned away from me. I wanted proof, not just for myself, but for you, when you were ready to hear it." A knot tightened in Lily's stomach. "Ready to hear what?" Tom reached out, his finger hovering over the recorder. "Recorded what, Grandma?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Grandma Rose pressed play. A crackle, then Sarah's voice, clear and unmistakable, filled the room. "I just worry about them being around her too much, you know? She's just so negative. Always has been. I wouldn't want her bad energy rubbing off on them." The date mentioned was from years ago, when Lily was barely 10. Lily gasped, a sharp intake of breath. The words, so familiar in their sentiment, felt alien coming from a recording, stripped of context, raw and exposed. Tom's face, usually animated, was stark white. Another clip played. "She tries to buy their affection, it's really quite sad. Always with the gifts, as if that makes up for her issues." This one was from 2 years prior, after Grandma Rose had given Lily a carefully chosen book. The room spun for Lily. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the calculated dismissiveness, the casual cruelty. She looked at Grandma Rose, who sat calmly, her gaze unwavering. Tom slammed his hand on his knee, a guttural sound of disbelief escaping him. His earlier confusion had morphed into something harder, colder. The truth, in Sarah's own voice, was a brutal, undeniable force, shattering years of carefully constructed narratives. Reconciliation and confrontation. The air in Grandma Rose's living room, thick with the nostalgic blend of lavender and aging paper, now carried a subtle undertone of profound regret. Lily and Tom sat upon the well-worn floral sofa, a chasm of silence stretching between them and their grandmother. Rose, nestled in her familiar armchair, clutched a small, framed photograph, her gaze lost in some distant memory. Tom's throat rasped as he cleared it. "Grandma," he began, his voice a mere whisper, we made a mistake." Tears welled in Lily's eyes, she nodded vehemently. "Such a terrible mistake. We allowed her to poison our minds with terrible falsehoods. About you." A sob caught, stifling her words. "We actually believed them." Rose's blue eyes, typically so luminous, now shimmered with unshed tears as she looked up. Without a word, she extended a trembling hand. In unison, Lily and Tom surged from the sofa, engulfing their grandmother in a fierce, protective embrace. The edifice of manufactured distance, spanning years, crumbled, replaced by a raw, profound sorrow and an overwhelming surge of love. Lily burrowed her face into Rose's shoulder, the soft wool of her cardigan a familiar solace she hadn't realized she'd craved so desperately. Tom's arms, newly strengthened, encircled them both, a silent vow that such a rift would never again cleave their family. Later that afternoon, a brittle tension permeated the kitchen's usually cheerful atmosphere. Sarah, humming a bright, almost defiant tune, sliced vegetables for dinner, either oblivious or willfully ignorant of the storm gathering. Lily and Tom stood by the counter, their expressions grim and resolute. Sarah, Tom stated, his voice flat, stripped of its usual playful cadence. She turned, a practiced smile affixed to her face. Yes, dear? Is everything all right? You both seem a little intense. No, everything is decidedly not all right, Lily countered, her voice trembling slightly but holding firm. We know. Sarah's smile faltered, a fleeting shadow of something dark crossing her eyes before she smoothly recovered. Know what, sweetie? Is this about that history test? I told you, if you just studied harder. It's about Grandma Rose, Tom interrupted, stepping forward. He held out his phone, its screen displaying a meticulously organized document. It's about all the things you said. All the lies you fed us. Sarah's face went rigid. She glanced at the phone, then back at them, her eyes narrowing to slits. Lies? What on earth are you babbling about? Your grandmother is eccentric. I merely sought to shield you from her negativity. Her voice, though strained, maintained its saccharine edge. You called her toxic, Lily said, her voice rising. You claimed she was manipulative, that she didn't love us, that she was trying to turn us against you. She documented it all, Sarah, Tom added, his voice low and steady. Every whisper after a visit, every interpretation of her words. She recorded conversations, noted dates, even kept the little notes you sent us as children, warning us not to trust her. Sarah's face contorted, the cheerful mask shattering into a mask of livid fury. That's preposterous. She's a senile old woman, fabricating fantasies. She's always been jealous of my bond with you, of our perfect family. She hurled the knife she'd been holding onto the chopping board with a violent clatter, her hands clenching into fists. You're choosing her over me? After everything I've sacrificed for you? Her voice ascended to a shrill pitch. She's brainwashing you. She's always been a bitter, nasty woman, trying to ruin everything good. But her vehement denials, once so potent, now sounded hollow and desperate. The carefully constructed narrative she'd woven for years was unraveling before their eyes, exposed by the stark, undeniable truth. Lily and Tom merely stared back, their resolve unyielding. Love blooms again. The hushed whispers started at Aunt Carol's Sunday brunch. Normally a boisterous affair filled with laughter and the clinking of teacups, a palpable tension hung in the air, thick as the morning fog. Sarah arrived late, her usual vibrant smile faltering under the weight of averted gazes. Uncle Robert, usually jovial, cleared his throat with an uncharacteristic sternness. Sarah, he began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth, we've heard some disturbing things. Lily and Tom, now teenagers, sat quietly beside Grandma Rose, their hands clasped in hers. Lily's gaze was fixed on the checkered tablecloth, a flush creeping up her neck. Tom, less subtle, watched his mother with wide, assessing eyes, a flicker of something akin to betrayal in their depths. The truth, painstakingly documented by Grandma Rose and shared with the wider family, had spread like wildfire. The meticulous notes, the timestamps, the subtle shifts in conversation, it all painted a devastating picture. Sarah's initial indignation quickly dissolved into a brittle defensiveness. What are you talking about? Has Rose been spreading more of her exaggerations? Her voice, usually so confident, wavered. Aunt Carol, her face etched with disappointment, placed a hand on Sarah's arm. These aren't exaggerations, dear. These are facts. The children, they've confirmed it. The things you told them about Rose, they simply aren't true. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, for the first time in memory, looked truly small, her usual bravado crumbling. The charming facade she'd meticulously built over years cracked, revealing the raw insecurity beneath. She saw the pity in some eyes, the condemnation in others, and the profound sadness in Lily's and Tom's. The isolation was immediate and absolute. She tried to offer explanations, excuses, but the words felt hollow, ringing false even to her own ears. Her world, once so carefully controlled, felt like it was slipping through her fingers. As the weeks turned into months, a different kind of bloom began to unfurl. Grandma Rose's garden, once a place of solitary solace, transformed into a vibrant hub of shared joy. Lily, with a newfound gentleness, helped her grandmother prune the climbing roses, their thorns a reminder of past hurts, now carefully managed. Tom, ever energetic, helped build a sturdy new bird feeder, his hammer blows echoing with a satisfying rhythm. They talked, often for hours, beneath the dappled sunlight filtering through the old oak tree. Lily shared her anxieties about school, her dreams for the future, her voice no longer hushed by unspoken fear. Tom recounted his latest adventures, his boisterous laughter filling the air, unburdened by the need to choose sides. Grandma Rose listened, her eyes crinkling at the corners, offering wisdom and comfort without judgment. The meals they shared, simple fare from the garden, tasted sweeter than any grand feast. One particularly warm afternoon, as the scent of honeysuckle mingled with freshly cut grass, Lily leaned her head against Grandma Rose's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Grandma Rose stroked Lily's hair. "There's nothing to forgive, my love. Just understanding. And now, moving forward." Tom, who had been watering a row of nascent tomatoes, joined them. He pulled a wilting leaf from a plant. "It's like starting over," he declared, holding up the leaf. "But stronger, right?" Grandma Rose smiled, a deep, contented expression. "Much stronger, my dear. Like these roots, reaching deeper than ever before." Her garden, a testament to resilience and renewal, mirrored their own flourishing bond. The laughter that now echoed through the old house was genuine, untainted, a melody of love rediscovered and cherished. The past, though never forgotten, no longer cast a shadow, but rather illuminated the preciousness of their rebuilt connection.